¿Qué tal? Muy buenos días a todos. En primer lugar, quiero agradecerles su presencia. I will try to speak English because we have many good distinguished guests today. And the first time I want to say that thank you, all of you, for your presence, for your time, for your interest in this event, in this topic, and in this passionate, activities that we have and we are making every day about Middle East studies. Thank you very much. First, all of you. In the second one, I want to thank my colleagues, Monique and Gilberto, for the comments that we will have to the presentation of Professor Hamid Dabashi, who, as you know, is one of the most prominent scholars about Middle East studies, critical studies, and an expert about Iran. He, of course, doesn't need presentation, doesn't need introduction. However, I want to say that he has written many books about the topic. He writes many articles and papers about Arab revolutions and critical culture in the Middle East. His works appears in some channels like Al Jazeera, in BBC Persian, and other no-official mass media around the world. So I want to say that in my personal view, and I say that from the deepest place of my heart, Hamid Dabashi is one of my intellectual inspirations, one of my guides in order to give out an opinion about Middle East, a reference, I hope all of we enjoyed this conference and we, have many problems in my work, because today I am more passionate than rational. So, thank you very much, Hamid. Thank you very much for coming. And without any other thing to say, please welcome Hamid Dabashi.
Well, thank you all for coming. I'm grateful to my dear friend Musa and his colleagues here in UNAM for the kind invitation. Please forgive me, I cannot speak Spanish. I wish I did. But I have now committed my children in New York, in which Spanish is the first language, to learn Spanish. So my hope is that the next generation of Dabashis will not be as incompetent as me in communicating with you in your magnificent, rich, and powerful language. I will try to speak as slowly as I know how, to make sure that whatever limited thing I may have to share, actually you follow. I've been asked to talk about representations of Asia. What I have to say about the representation of Asia is very much applicable to representation of Africa and of Latin America. That is, there is a mode and body of representations, usually from Western Europe and North Africa, North America, United States and Canada, in the traditional, now fortunately overcome, context of representation, the power of representation, that depending on the mode and modality and moment of conquest and colonialism, they change their attention from one representation to another. But they have very limited imagination, and these modes of representation are regurgitated, are recycled from one continent to another continent. Central to this problem of representation is, of course, the power to represent. Who has the power to represent? In an entirely different context, Karl Marx once said, they, referring to peasantry, cannot represent themselves, they must be represented, which became as a guiding idea when my late colleague Edward Said was writing Orientalism. So an argument which he then repeated in a keynote speech that he gave to anthropologists, and the question of representation and anthropologist interlocutors was the key factor. So, perfect example for you to know, right here in this room that we are sitting, just because this microphone is in front of me, and when I talk is loud, and when you talk is not loud, I have the power of representation. So I can shout and say whatever I want to say about what is happening here, and unless and until one of you gets up, grabs the microphone from my hand and starts talking, that power is not equal. It's unequal power. And much of the university also comes from the pulpit. I mean, habitually I avoid that mise en scène, that particular semiotics, because it is a remnant from medieval pulpit, whether in Catholic Church or Islamic context. You go there and you diffuse knowledge and you take notes, and at the end of the semester you don't grade me, I grade you. This is power of representation. So we have to have a very palpable conception of the power of representation, and not figurative. The thing about the power of representation is not only semiotic, it begins with political representation. It extends into semiotics, into linguistics, into hermeneutics, and into a whole range of adjacent disciplines that, by power that is at the disposal of the regime of power, what Foucault called régime de savoir, the regime of knowledge, has different manifestations. They are not necessarily congeal with each other, they might be different, but it is important to notice that semiotics is not the only mode of representation. There are other modes of representation. One argument I would like to make for your consideration is that in semiotic representation, when we have a picture, okay, and here maybe I could just show you one example. This is the cover of my late colleague Edward Said's book, Covering Islam, the question of representation. How do we know about Middle East? What we know about Middle East, how do we know it? And it's a perfect photograph because there are two cameras involved. One is the camera that is shooting the person who is shooting, and one is the camera that is shooting the person who's shooting the person who's shooting. Do you follow? So my argument is that in any given picture that, like this, we don't see this picture, for example. In this picture, we don't see the photographer, we don't see the camera. But we can use our imagination to realize that there is a camera and there is a photographer, and that photographer made very specific technical decisions. How to frame the picture, how close to the subject to be, how far, how close, how open, how close the framing of how during the day, during the evening, how much light, okay? And my argument is that in any semiotic sign, we're actually witness to two sides. In this picture, for example, we're not just seeing something called Muslim rage. We're also seeing the particular anxiety of the photographer behind this picture. So camera, I always say, has two sides. The side that you see through and the side that you don't know. You're also taking a picture of yourself. You know how NSA is spying on us? I'm sure that your own president is now being listened to like any other president by President Obama. That looking is two sides. So for example, that iPhone that you have in your hand and you take a picture of me, The question is that that iPhone is also taking a picture of you. And the picture that you take of me and you show it, put it on your Facebook or wherever, also shows how close you were to me, how far from me, how did you close the frame, and also in what light you're seeing me. Are you seeing me like sometimes my picture is on the front page of New York tabloids, like a two-headed monster? Or is it kinder, gentler look? Okay? For example, if you hate somebody, take a picture of that person is entirely different than if you love somebody and take a picture of that person. So the emotive universe of the photographer, of the camera person, is also there. And if we expand it into the political context, what kind of imagery the regime of power decides and opts and takes and projects and sends forward doesn't only tell us about, oh, the Muslim rage, Muslims are angry and about to blow up the world. It also shows the particular anxiety of the regime, the visual regime that keeps producing these pictures. Okay? It's a reverse angle. In cinematography, we have something called a reverse angle. That you see from the shoulder of an actor, somebody says something, and then you go for a reverse angle to look for the reaction. So it is very important in our understanding of semiotics of power that in fact the regime of power is giving you the evidence of how to analyze and psychoanalyze and socioanalyze it, but they don't know it. So put it down. Any picture that you take has two sides. Now, my argument is, I will first summarize my argument and then go through the pictures. I have a show and tell for you. The visual vocabulary of representation reveals as much about the phantom fears of those who represent and what it is that they wish to show, and as a result what it is that they are afraid of. So in any kind of analysis of semiotics, we need to do two things simultaneously. We need to criticize and dismantle the hegemony of this semiotics, which is a semiotic of domination, because this camera is a very powerful instrument. Okay? As soon as I put it in front of you, in fact, in many repressive regimes, when there is a political demonstrations, the security apparatus sends people with camera, and that camera is as much powerful as a gun. Somebody pointing a gun at you, and somebody putting a camera in front of you. So it is, this semiotic is a semiotic of domination. So that's the first thing. We have to recognize it, analyze it, and dismantle it. I just put it forward. The second is to use it to read the pathology of power, to see how power represents itself, the power that we face. Now, the good news is that because of the technology and new media, we are no longer at the mercy of being represented by way of being dominated. We can picture back. In other words, if I go back to my Facebook today and take a picture of you and put it on my Facebook and say whatever I want. Oh, I was there and there were 5 million people or 300,000 people in the audience, whatever. Because you have the ability to do exactly the same in the Facebook, okay? That will counterbalance, okay? This is vastly different from the time that I was your age in Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania, and I was at the mercy of New York Times. That was the only thing that was possible. So whatever New York Times said, I had to cringe and swallow my anger and move on. And I remember that I had to, when the Iranian Revolution of 1977-79 happened, I got into my car and I drove to a shopping mall called King of Prussia to buy a shortwave radio, if you believe it, to try to listen to Tehran radio from Philadelphia to see what was going on in New York. But today I get up in the morning, as I did here in Mexico this morning, and I read the news in Iran before they actually have read it. And a young Iranian actress has just been arrested, so I put it on my Facebook and bamboozled the ruling government. So when the government, the security and intelligence apparatus of the Islamic Republic gets up in the morning, say, oh my God, Dabashi's at it again. And they had, so we have, and then I have about 70,000 people on my Facebook. If it goes viral, if there is something important goes viral, forget it. There are tens of thousands of people can see it. And as a result, traditional press, I teach at Columbia. The Columbia School of Journalism has recognized that there is a crisis in the very architecture of journalism, and have hired deans in order to understand the nature of this monster called new media. And the nature of this monster is that we're no longer at the mercy of New York Times or CNN or BBC or any other major news media. We can picture back. This balance, however it might be asymmetrical warfare, but asymmetrical warfare is the name of the game. Today is asymmetrical warfare. We are no longer at the mercy of the power of representation. So, in the talk that I'm about to present, I wish to argue the following. Number one, there is a visual regime of representation that seeks to see, to watch, to picture, and to show the world in a manner best suited to a stage, to sustain the status quo. By which I don't mean any conspiracy. There is no conspiracy. There are only a constellation of interests. And that constellation of interests of top 100 billionaires in United States, for example, their collective wealth being more than GNP of many nation states. While, according to UN, 50 million people go to bed hungry every night. Okay? 300,000 human beings are roaming around the globe in search of jobs. Poverty line in the United States is 49 million. 49 million human beings in the United States under poverty line. The figure of twice the poverty line, which is almost becomes 120 million, is even more significant, because that means a parent, a father and mother have to work like slaves in order to put a roof over the head of their children and feed their children. So when we say regime of power, I don't mean there is a conspiracy. There is no conspiracy. This is the way capitalism operates. It spits out human beings that it cannot sustain. This is the nature of the beast. And the increased securitization of the state apparatus that you hear about the Snowden, you know the Snowden person, and the national security state. What does that mean? That there are computers. I used to say, I don't care if they're reading my email, listening to my phone, or watching me on my Facebook. I hope they listen to what I say, take note, and do as I say. But I realized that there are actually computer softwares that are doing this. There is no human being, and computer softwares don't have a sense of humor. They can understand a joke from a real thing. So what did they do as a result? There is the accumulation of this intelligence of raw data that